December 2025. Today, the Cabinet would have met on a number of critical issues on national security and education and many other issues, and we are being joined this evening by the Minister of Public Administration and AI, Senator Dominic Smith, and the Minister of Education, Honorable Michael Dowlat. So this evening, as we discuss two areas of key concern, I'd like to invite Minister Dowlat, the Minister of Education, to speak to you.
Good evening, members of the press and the viewing public. As we welcomed all our students and teachers and administrators and parents and all those who support schools back to this first week of the new academic year 2025-2026, I want to say that we have had a significant increase in attendance during this week. We had over 91% attendance by students in all schools. I also want to say that we were able to complete one of the most significant vocation repair programs. Over 271 schools were carded for repairs. All of them were completed. And along with that, parallel to that, we had over 170 emergency works. And so I think that from the reviews from our national PTA and from tutor and all the other stakeholders, we have significantly prepared all our schools for the education of our students as we welcome them back. I want to say too that I'm very thankful for the collaboration with the Ministry of Public Utilities led by Minister Padarat, especially the MTS led by Chairman Baran. MTS undertook one of the most significant repair programs in their history and in the history of education. And I want to say congratulations to them. They were stress tests and they came up to the standard. And they will continue to work in our schools to ensure that they maintain the infrastructure. This evening, I want to announced that the Cabinet has agreed to the upgrade of wireless access solutions for primary schools and secondary schools. This government has prioritized the integration of technology in schools. And this is to improve teacher training, to modernize the curriculum, and to prepare our students for the future. The use of technology in education allows for improved student productivity and leads to enhanced learning outcomes and efficiency. This project, implementing an upgrade of the wireless solutions at primary and secondary school, has a dual aim. It seeks to address the inadequate wireless connectivity across the nation's schools through the expansion of bandwidth at 125 government and government-assisted secondary schools, and the installation of network access points at the 454 government and government-assisted primary schools. And especially the expansion of bandwidth at all secondary schools will significantly increase internet coverage within those secondary schools. It will extend reliable wireless connectivity to a larger number of classrooms, laboratories, libraries, and other learning spaces, so that by broadening the reach of connectivity, this initiative will ensure that more teachers and students can actively participate in e-learning, e-testing, and other digital educational activities. And in doing so, it will create a modern learning environment that supports artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, and immersive computing. This project is complementary to the government's trust to supply all incoming Form 1 students with laptops for the 2025-2026 academic year. So as part of the project, the ministry will establish a national minimum internet bandwidth standard for all secondary schools. setting the baseline service at 500 megabytes per second download and 250 megabytes per second upload. And in addition to the installation of network access points at all 454 government and government-assisted primary schools, there will be a structured implementation of the cabling and commercial-grade wireless access points. And what does this do for us at the Ministry of Education? It will enhance and allow the Ministry of Education to remotely monitor and manage wireless access across all schools, ensuring functionality. It will also allow schools to effectively communicate electronically with the Ministry of Education as we are moving to a more paperless communication. I want to move now to the recognition of students in the SEA exams. The Ministry of Education has resumed the recognition of the students who place in the top 200 positions in the SEA. And we have added the top 25 primary schools for recognition from the results of the 2025 secondary entrance assessment. Now, in 2025, 17,870 students wrote the SEA exam. And the Ministry of Education has undertaken an analysis to highlight both individual and institutional excellence. The top 200 students have been identified, and in addition, the top 25 primary schools have been ranked. This approach reflects the best international practice by ensuring recognition of excellence, accountability for low outcomes, and fairness across schools of varying sizes. Due to a tie for the 200 position, 201 students were placed in the top 200 positions. And the statistics go like this. Of the 200, 123 females represented 61.2% of the top 200 positions, and 78 males, 38.8%. The majority of students, as assessed from educational districts, 30% came from Victoria, 25% came from St. George East, and Caroni Educational District, 21%. Tobago, 1%, and Northeastern, 3%, remain underrepresented. 68.2% of the 200 students attended denominational schools, 20.4% attended private schools, and 11.4% represented government schools. The top 25 schools were concentrated: St. George East, 7, Port of Spain, 7, Victoria, 5, and fewer in Caroni Educational District, 4, and St. Patrick, 2. No schools were represented from southeastern or northeastern districts. The list of 25 schools featured strong representation from private preparatory schools and denominational schools. Denominational schools included the Hindu schools, Presbyterian, and Muslim. In recognition of these outstanding achievements, the Ministry of Education proposes to host a recognition ceremony for the top performing students and schools. The top 200 students to be awarded certificates of excellence and commemorative tokens, while the top 25 schools will be awarded plaques in recognition of their outstanding institutional performance. This initiative will highlight the achievements of schools and students, fostering a culture of excellence and encourage improvement across the educational system. It will hopefully motivate them to improve in their performances. I want to now recognize the students and the schools that they came from. There was a three-way tie for the first position. Nicholas Dolly, Shagwana's government, Sandhya Maharaj, Macaulay government, and Xavier Telesford was a homeschooler. And in the fourth position, Kailash Diyal Singh from Exchange Presbyterian, and the fifth position, Ashlyn Ramkisoon from Jordan Hill Presbyterian. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dowlat, and we congratulate you for one of the most, according to stakeholders, one of the most successful first week of the new school term. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now welcome the Minister of Public Administration and AI to brief us this evening, Senator Dominic Smith.
Thank you, colleague. Good afternoon to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, members of the media, specially invited guests. This afternoon, I want to touch on two items of national importance. The first deals with an interministerial committee that the Cabinet has newly approved today, in fact, and it deals with the issues as it relates to cyber security and artificial intelligence, and meant to address cybersecurity threats, and of course, something that has been in the public domain of recent time, AI-enabled scams. Now, Trinidad and Tobago is not unique in these threats, and we have been witnessing a rapid increase in cyber-related incidents and artificial intelligence-enabled scams targeting public officials and well-known organizations. The range of illicit activities that currently target citizens include, but are not limited to, investor scams. Some of these investor scams are utilizing AI-generated likenesses of public figures and with the intent to defraud citizens. And so the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago takes these threats very seriously. The second item relates to phishing attacks and ransomware operations targeting individuals and public institutions. The third item related to identity theft and fraudulent use of personal and financial information. And of course, though AI has great potential, there's also been the emergence of AI-driven misinformation campaigns that threaten social trust and public order. And so the government of Trinidad and Tobago, in its wisdom, has put together the development of a national cybersecurity and AI safety framework. And the objectives of this framework are as follows. The public should note that we are now and have established a whole government approach to cyber resilience, scam prevention, and AI governance. We continue to incorporate international best practices for AI safety, transparency, and the ethical use of emerging technologies. Further, the implementation of a national awareness campaign on scams using artificial intelligence likenesses, also known as deepfakes and digital impersonation. This committee is meant to strengthen capacity within law enforcement to investigate and prosecute cybersecurity and AI-driven fraud, and of course, to enhance partnership with financial institutions, telcos, and tech platforms to proactively block fraudulent schemes. Now, the makeup of this interministerial committee has been one that the government has contemplated given the information that we've received, and representatives of each of these are as follows. The Ministry of Homeland Security, the Ministry of Finance, the Office of the Attorney General, the Office of the Prime Minister, the Cyber and Social Media Unit, Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Financial Intelligence Unit of Trinidad and Tobago, and of course, the Trinidad and Tobago Cybersecurity Incident Response Team, also known as TCC-CERT. And so the above-mentioned Interministerial Steering Committee on Cybersecurity and Artificial Intelligence will serve as a national coordinating body for cybersecurity and AI-related policy, incident response, and legislative alignment, as well as report quarterly on emerging threats, legislative gaps, and recommended interventions. Technology, as we know, is rapidly increasing. On a daily, we have seen pervasive technologies, and of course, while technology is increasing, persons are utilizing technology to the detriment of society. And so as a government, we recognize these threats, and in the support of our citizens, we have put together what we consider a very prudent and wise group of individuals and units that will no doubt spearhead these initiatives and aim to prevent a lot of these challenges that the society as large faces. Among them include persons who are most vulnerable. We've seen issues as it relates to the elderly as well, who are more susceptible to these type of schemes. And so we have implemented this committee and now Cabinet approved for these purposes. So that's one thing I wanted to bring to the national focus. The second item I want to talk about briefly is that the government has now approved a digital readiness assessment and associated development and implementation of these recommendations for digital societal gaps that may exist. The last readiness assessment that was conducted by the government was in conjunction with the UNDP, and its focus really was on a number of pillars. The core pillars that the government seeks to address are its digital readiness, aligned with the UNDP's digital transformation framework, linking connectivity of people, the connectivity of government. Thirdly, regulation as it relates to this connectivity, the economy, and of course, the cross-cutting enablers, including issues such as interoperability, e-payments, and artificial intelligence assistance. Typically, these assessments would occur over a 2 to 3 year period. The government has seen it prudent to advance this assessment given the new mandate of the ministry and the combination of the Ministry of Public Administration and Artificial Intelligence to look at technologies as it relates to advancements in artificial intelligence and generative AI. The main item as it relates to this readiness assessment will tackle, one, the national digital baseline established by international benchmarks to set Trinidad and Tobago as the leader against its peers in the global sphere, to identify, of course, institutional, legal, infrastructural, and human capital gaps that constrain our digital transformation as a nation, and of course, to establish and implement roadmaps for the next 5 years. In particular, we want to advise the public that we will also be monitoring and evaluating these indicators to enable progressive tracking of success across all ministries. And in particular, this assessment will leverage new frameworks set as a standard by World Bank Digital Economy for Latin America and the Caribbean, and International Telecommunications Unit, ITU, digital development indexes, as well as ensuring both comparability and forward alignment. As it stands, Trinidad has set the standard in terms of Caribbean adoption for AI readiness under the leadership and the tutelage of our esteemed Prime Minister, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, SC. We have established this ministry. This ministry continues to drive the agenda This ministry continues to act urgently as it relates to our digital transformation and our artificial intelligence focus. And we continue to not only act, but listen to the public and the citizens, garner feedback, and of course, act appropriately. This is a government of proactive activity, and we're tackling the issues as it relates to the technological environment as we see it, both anticipation as well as prevention. So I want to thank all members of the media for your attention and members of the public for their attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister of Public Administration and AI, as you speak to our government's trust for digital development. We'd like now to open the floor to members of the media.
Good afternoon, Prior Bihari, AZP News. My first question is to Minister Daulat. Mr. Daulat, the wireless access to primary schools and secondary schools, there will be certain sites, of course, that wouldn't be appropriate for children minors. What safeguards are in place to ensure that they don't visit these sites?
And that's something I think the Minister of Artificial Intelligence will support us in, because all of the specs that we use at the Ministry of Education is confirmed and supported by Ministry of AI.
Yeah, safe to say that we've done our due diligence. We understand the needs of the students, but at the same time, we do want to protect the use of the technology. And so the government, the Ministry of Education, all relevant stakeholders have been meeting actively as we roll out this program. And rest assured, the public can trust in the process that we've undertaken. And no doubt, we'll be given constant feedback as time progresses. And we've taken many things into consideration, including how do we safeguard our kids.
And how do we safeguard the kids? In other words, if there is a phone and a child wants to go into a site, inappropriate site, how is that going to be prevented?
Well, I mean, the understanding is that the internet is, it comes from the telcos, and there are ways in which the technology can be used to prevent, the certain sites from being viewed. We can also set parameters of use. So all of that are in the guidelines that will be provided, and that will be followed by the Ministry of Education in the implementation and execution of this technology.
And Mr. Daulat, is there now a policy on cell phones in schools?
There was always a policy on cell phones in schools where they were moderated by the principal and the teachers. And some schools will ask the students to actually leave it in the main office, and others will ask them to be turned off, depending on the culture of the school and the way in which the technology is required. One of the things that I want us to understand is that the use of technology is good, and therefore, when you look at policies in school, you want to allow a certain amount of freedom for use of it by the students. But as you rightly asked about the safeguards, to access the internet in the school, for all of our laptops and things like that, you will have the appropriate firewalls and all of those things, because that is part of the network that we're setting up. And through this system, you will also have monitoring from the Ministry of Education itself.
And do you have a date for when laptops would arrive?
In the upcoming weeks, we'll update you as they roll out, but the internet access is the precursor to the laptops being in the schools to ensure that they can be used, the use can be maximized.
And would there be a cost to that? In our government would pay the service providers to bring internet in schools?
Yes. So TSTT is the normal provider, and in all our schools, and so therefore that has been worked out through the line items through the Ministry of Education.
In terms of SEA, I see girls again outperforming boys. Is that a concern for you? In terms of boys, underperforming?
One of the interesting things is that you will notice that of the top three who placed first, two are males. And so it's good to see that boys are actually, you know, the underperformance over the past, they are actually coming up to the required standards. And so, yes, it's a concern even up to the CSEC level and the CAPE level, and also at universities. And so it's something that we are addressing at the Ministry of Education in terms of the curriculum and the kind of support that we want to give, especially for those young men who are underachieving, not just generally, but especially in mathematics, because both at the SEA level and at the CSEC level, we've recognized the underperformance in mathematics, especially with males.
Dr. Dowlath, Alicia Shamley, AZP News. When you look at the statistics that you gave with SEA, you are seeing with the top performing schools, non-denominational schools are high up there, as are private schools, and then you have 11% public schools. Likewise, when you look at the different educational districts, when you break that down, can you say that there is an inequity in how within education systems for children? Meaning, is the education a child from a denominational school getting different, and the attention that they're getting different from a child who goes to a public school? And is this level of inequity something that the ministry plans to address? Because it is something that has been a concern for a long time within SEA.
Yes, so this is something that has been in existence in terms of the data over a significant period of time. So what we have been doing is to look both at the content and how the content is being delivered, especially in our government primary and secondary schools. And so since May this year, we've been meeting with the curriculum division, and we have been looking especially recently at the use of AI tutors and the support, and together with the Ministry of Public Admin and AI, we have been looking at how technology can be used to, as you would have indicated, to ameliorate that inequity in terms of the kind of opportunities our students have to succeed. We're also looking at the assessment systems in terms of the SEA itself, and during the upcoming year, we are looking at the reintroduction of the CAC, and we are looking at the secondary school at the NCSE, and measuring at the different levels the performance, so that as you measure the performance, you can inform the next level. So there are certain performance standards that we're going to look at, so that a student, before they go to our next level, we want to ensure that they achieve those standards. So we have been actively looking at it since May this year, and teachers have been trained over the period.
Okay. Going now to the police presence in school, that initiative. This week we saw 2 incidents of violence. One in the Arima Secondary School, where there was an altercation between a teacher and a student, and then one in El Dorado, where we had a parent assault a student on the outskirts of his school. The TTPS had a press conference today. In terms of the Arima School, they explained that in putting this initiative together, both the ministry and the TTPS sat down together. Everybody had a list, and then schools were selected from that list. They said the Arima School was a part of that list, however, it didn't make it. So a question that I had asked the TTPS today, and I think you would probably best to answer it, is in a few months, are we going to see a reassessment of this program? Are we going to see, okay, the TTPS presence has worked well enough in X school, Y school needs it now? And will there be a shift?
Right, so thank you for the question. So, as you recognize, it's an ongoing program that we have, and in 6 months, we're going to have that reassessment. Now, at the ministry, we are taking all matters of school and discipline extremely seriously. And the first matter at Arima North, where there was an altercation in the classroom between a student and teacher yesterday, and the second one at El Dorado, where there was a confrontation outside the school compound that escalated into a parent striking a child. Both matters are under active investigation, and the appropriate support and interventions have been put in place. At Arima North, and you would have gotten the reports earlier today from that press conference, the ministry intervened immediately because the community police visited the school. And assembly was held with all the students, and counseling sessions were conducted with the affected classes. And a parent conference has also been arranged. At El Dorado East, the matter is receiving urgent attention from the school administration and supported by the TTPS. So I want to say that from the ministry, we want to assure the national community and all parents and students that we continue to strengthen these measures. And we are not waiting for the end of 6 months, but at the end of every week, we are reassessing where we are in terms of indiscipline in schools. What we are also looking at is the expansion of the guidance and counseling services available to schools, and the enforcement of the National School Code of Conduct. And we have been looking at a pilot project that was started last year, the whole approach to restorative justice and anti-bullying programs. So we want to, as we move forward with the TTPS being another layer in terms of all the measures we're taking, we want to ensure that we have these safe and secure schools.
Good afternoon, Minister Dowlat. Going back to that Eldo East situation, I mean, one could possibly understand a parent's passion to want to protect their child, but what message do you have for parents who find themselves in a situation where they want to take things into their own hands and accost students outside the school, maybe in the school? What message do you have for those parents?
I would say to those parents, and one of the measures we're taking is that we're developing parenting programs for parents to understand that when conflicts arise in school amongst students, of course, the parents are the legal guardians, but there are systems already existing in schools. And I'm asking parents to support the systems that are in schools, with the deans of disciplines, with the principals. You could start with the classroom teachers if it's a primary school. And so there are already existing systems. And when you take actions into your own hand, then there are other sanctions that may come your way.
I mean, we've heard in the past where some parents would say, well, I told the school many times, they didn't do anything. Are you also telling the schools to take these things seriously as well?
Well, of course. And so what we have done is that we continue to have collaborative meetings with the principals, with the deans, with the TTPS, with the school safety officers, with MTS, and we are on high alert for these kinds of incidents.
Going to SEA, I know you mentioned that you'll be taking a look at SEA. Around SEA time every year, we hear some people calling for the SEA to be scrapped, replaced by something else. They see some deficiencies with the SEA. Is that under consideration, a removal of the SEA altogether and a replacement with something new?
Well, what I've mentioned earlier is that we are looking at the implementation of the CAC to modify the approach to the SCA exam. So it's not a one-shot exam at the end of it. continuous assessment component.
Last evening, opposition leader Penelope Beckles at the PNM meeting would have asked if you could reveal the criteria you all used to determine which schools should have police officers in them. Can you do that?
I will ask you to direct the question to the Commissioner of Police, because in collaboration with the Commissioner of Police and the team we have at the Ministry, the criteria would have been developed. So you could redirect it to the Commissioner of Police.
Sure. I know Prior asked you about the laptops, and he said in a couple of weeks you'll make. But I remember when we would have asked you a little while ago, you said you were looking at the end of September to start the rollout of distribution. Is that still on track?
Yes.
And how will that work in terms of, so you give the Form 1 child a laptop, they sign for it, and then that's it? So how does it work?
We will let you know as we come closer to the time of delivery.
All right. And just finally, this
because
week...
we are very accessible to you as the press. You know that. I'm sure you know that.
I have a one-tick message from you, which I hope it didn't block me. But parents at Bosia RC said flooding issues are affecting classes. It happened this week where they have to dismiss the classes early. Are you doing anything for them?
Yes. So what we have done is the EFPPD division at the Ministry of Education that deals with that. They would have done their investigation, so we're just waiting for their report to collaborate with the MTS and also I think with the regional corporation to see what measures can be taken to alleviate that flooding.
Minister Dowlad, Karen Kuze Philip, TTT News. Just back to the Arima North Secondary School. Can you tell us if any action has been taken against that student, if the student was suspended for that fracas?
Like I said a little while ago previously, that the investigation is ongoing, and we will let you know as soon as we've completed the investigation and the action taken by the school and also possibly by the TTPS.
So the student remains in school, in class?
The investigation is ongoing, and the school discipline matrix has measures to deal with whether students are in class or not, depending on the severity of the incident.
Good day, Dr. Dowlath. Well, the online, there's a list of school names circulating on online social media. Supposedly, the schools are going to have a police presence, and I think there's also a promise of police patrols to visit other schools. Could you confirm if the list is accurate, and could you say where could we find a list that would also be having police patrols, please?
I haven't seen the list, but whenever it comes into my view, I will let you know.
Okay. Or are you publishing any of the lists at all? Are you planning to publish the?
Remember, we have an active committee together with the TTPS, and those bits of information will come as we continue to meet, because as we indicated, that we are constantly reviewing the process.
Okay. There was a question, Newsday did a story maybe about a week ago regarding Venezuelan students who were trying to get registered, because I've heard somebody say that they had organized a place for their child in a Roman Catholic school, but there was supposed to be approval coming from the Ministry of Homeland Security. So I guess we'd ask, is the ministry itself wanting to try to prod along this system of registering these names of these students and, to get them into school? Like, if we assuming that there are persons who have actually made arrangements to place a child.
Right, that matter is engaging the attention of the government right now, because it's not just the Ministry of Education involved. As you indicated, it's Homeland Security and there. So that matter is engaging the attention of the government right now. So as soon as the policies are confirmed, you will be informed.
But I mean, is there any identifiable keep back at all on it? Is there any? I mean, I know it's kind of could be complicated, but I don't know if there's any identifiable problem, or if things, can we give assurances, well, because remember the school term has started, and so I guess that's the challenge.
It's a complex issue, and I'm sure in good time you will get an answer to that question. Okay.
Dr. Dowlath, good afternoon. Doris Polo, Guardian Media. You recently responded to Akash and his question about a message to parents who are passionate about, incidents with their students or their children at schools. What message would you have for teachers? Because the incident that happened at Arima North reminds me of an incident that happened at Maruga Secondary School back in January, where a bloody video went viral, and there were rumors and reports coming all the way from Africa that the teacher had died. What's your message to teachers who find themselves in these scenarios with students?
My message to teachers is that there are measures in school, there are protocols in school to be used when situations like these occur. And we're ensuring that, just like the intervention of police in schools, that we have the right staffing in place. We have the correct number of teachers. You have the support from school safety officers, from the MTS, and things like that. And we are working, given the data that we have from various schools, to ensure that we can provide the safest environment for them to operate in. So all schools have their code of conduct and the discipline matrix to follow. But I want to assure the teachers that from the ministry's perspective, that we are working to ensure that the classroom environment is as safe as possible.
As a former teacher yourself, what do you make of incidents such as this one, where teachers find themselves entangled in brawls with students?
What I would say, you have to treat each one individually, case by case. And after the investigation, we will get down to the root of what was the issue. Sometimes, superficially, you look at it on a video, but that can't always tell you what was the source of the conflict that would have led to that particular incident. So as we've begun this particular term and this week, these two incidents have been given high priority for us, as all incidents like this will be.
A week ago, the former Education Minister, Dr. Nyan Gatsby-Dolly, would have raised concerns about an alleged failure to renew the contracts of school guidance counselors and social workers. Can you give us an update on that? What's the allocation across the ministry at this point?
We have been resourcing all the departments, and we've been looking at them, and as the needs of school arise for social workers, guidance officers, guidance counselors, for aides, over the last 4 months we have been reviewing that process. And so just like all the initiatives, we depend on the data from the schools and the needs for the individual schools. So we're in the process of reviewing that, and we are ensuring that we provide through the SSSD division all the required support staff.
Was it accurate for Dr. Gatsby-Dolly to say that contracts weren't renewed for school social workers and guidance counselors?
No.
So contracts were renewed?
Of course.
Okay, so I wanted to ask another question before I pass over to my colleague. We have some issues that some members of the media were discussing before the press conference actually started. The Vice President of Venezuela making certain comments directed to Trinidad and Tobago and other pressing issues. So I have to ask, where is Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar to respond to these questions that are now in the public domain?
Thank you very much, Doris. All members of the public would have noted this week in all of your papers, from The Guardian to The Express, the Prime Minister had a number of statements on that issue. So the Prime Minister has been very accessible. She has spoken a lot on that issue. Today, we have Cabinet, the Prime Minister is engaged in a number of meetings, but the Prime Minister has always been accessible and commented on that issue. And so the Prime Minister, I'm sure, if you use the channels, you will access her just the same way that your media house would have printed statements from the Prime Minister in the past week on the same issue. I just want to reinforce, though, on behalf of the government, members of parliament, both in the House and the Senate, that we stand firmly behind the Prime Minister's statements in the past weeks, especially in response to the Colombian government and so on. So again, the Prime Minister is not running from the Venezuelan issue. She has been very, very, very outspoken on the issue, and it's been printed in all of your media houses. And again, but today, the cabinet is meeting, the Prime Minister is in a number of meetings, and we thought it very important that we get back to key issues such as education and the government's digital drive. But again, the Prime Minister will speak in due course, as she has spoken in the past days on this issue.
Will we be getting an opportunity to engage with? It's easy to send a WhatsApp message and get a response, but of course sometimes you have follow-up questions that can be ignored because, you know, technology. Will we be getting an opportunity to engage with the Prime Minister just like we are able to do with Dr. Daulath and the other minister beside him?
The Prime Minister, again, I would say the Prime Minister has always been accessible to you all. Many of the stories in the newspapers and on the media this week has been as a result of your media colleagues reaching out to the Prime Minister. So this is one Prime Minister that has always accepted engagement, and she will be engaged going forward. Again, Parliament returns tomorrow. The government has a very robust legislative agenda, and you will also see the Prime Minister addressing the country as we go forward as Parliament reopens. So again, let's not create a narrative that the Prime Minister is not accessible to the media. She is. You go back to the newspapers this week, you go back to the media houses, you would have printed articles that the Prime Minister herself spoke to you all. So again, she's accessible, and she will be engaging with you all in coming days on this issue.
Does the same apply to Finance Minister Dave Tanku?
Of course, the Minister of Finance has always been engaging with you all. The entire government, this has been one of the one of the most successful governments. One thing we must clarify is that, as you would see, that this is a cabinet media briefing, not really a post-cabinet media briefing, because many days when you come here, the cabinet is still meeting. This is a government that takes our agenda quite seriously, and the cabinet it continues to meet is meeting whole day when you come here. So you only have ministers who can leave the room to address you, while other ministers are engaged in national business. So it's not to say that the cabinet finishes within 2 hours to speak to you, but again, I have seen the Minister of Finance, and many colleagues have seen the Minister of Finance engage with you, and we are about that time where the Minister of Finance will become very prominent. So again, every single minister within this government has been very accessible, and we'll continue to work with you all. We respect the great work you all do in the media, and this government continues to be accessible as we speak on our agenda.
I'd just like to actually pick up on Doris Polo's question and say that, I mean, the two real burning issues of the past week or so have been our territorial integrity, the idea, the notion of sovereignty, if bodies are washing up and so forth. So I would, to follow up on Ms. Polo, I would say, would you be able to convey to the Honourable Prime Minister the media's concern that if she would be able to present herself to engage back and forth interactively with us on that question? And, or if not, maybe Minister Sobers as Foreign Secretary, or even we have Defence, the Ministry of External Defence now, so there are people. Of course, the second issue of concern would have been the whole CPEP and URP situation. So whether the Prime Minister could present herself, you know, to present a plan, because it can shake the confidence of a nation, not just the individuals concerned, but at every level, small business, they want enough money flowing or not if people are losing their jobs. So that would be the other thing. If somebody could come and engage with the media on these two issues for Venezuela, as Ms. Polo said, and the URP-CPEP situation.
Thank you very much, Sean. First, I want to actually commend the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who again over the weekend was very vociferous and accommodating in his statements and his breakdown of the issue concerning Venezuela and our relationship with this issue and even our place in CARICOM. So the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Honourable Sean Sobers, has been very outspoken on this issue and accessible, and I'm sure as this issue, not sure, I am confident to tell you that as this issue goes forward, Minister Sobers and the Prime Minister will communicate with you as they have done on this issue. I've looked at the front pages of the daily papers today, and I can say that Minister Amin was very engaging on the issue of URP and so on. But again, that will be discussed as we go forward. But today the Cabinet was discussing a number of issues, especially this being the first week of school, and we saw it fit to comment on some very key issues that was discussed on education as well as the government's digital drive. But again, all of our ministers will continue to address you on those issues as we go forward. So thanks very much, Sean.
Sivida Prasad, your radio. Two quick questions to the Minister of Education and perhaps a question to the Minister of Public Administration and Digital Transformation, or AI. First of all, in terms of the Miracle Ministries High School, the Director of Education, Pastor Coffey, I believe, he said that several requests were made to the previous administration for repairs and renovation to the school. None has taken place over a period of time. The school, I believe, remained closed, well, at least the physical structure of that school. I'm not sure if classes are being held elsewhere. Could you state whether the current incarnation of yourself as a minister, is paying attention to provide relief in terms of renovation and repair to that school?
Thank you very much for your question. You're perfectly right that the school was neglected by the past government. But what we did is that when it came to our attention, we intervened and we engaged the MTS. And so the Miracle Ministries Secondary School was open on the first day of school. And so there has been a plan for ensuring that the repairs to windows and replacement of furniture and the other necessary requirements for the school to continue working. So the school is up and running, and we have a very good relationship with that board and with the Ministry of Education. So the school was open on the first day.
Right. In terms of guidance counselors in various schools, one of the issues, there have been suggestions that could help in terms of prevention of violence in schools, as well as perhaps as students grow older in the national community, that of conflict resolution, anger management. Are there any sort of programs taking place in the school where these issues can reach directly to the students in terms of regular role play scenarios and professional assistance where that's concerned?
The guidance officers and counselors actually engage in those activities from the primary school level up, going into secondary school. And one of the things that we're doing too is that we are in the process of engaging teachers in the same kind of training like the guidance officers. So there will be a congruence in the way in which we approach the students and their behavior, both in and out of the classroom, so that we have that department in the Ministry of Education working together with the training department, together with the SSSD, to ensure that we are upskilling. Now, one of the things that we are also doing, as the question was posed earlier, we ensuring that we are giving the proper support to those schools where you have a greater need for the social workers and the guidance officers. So we are in the process of ensuring that we are upskilling our social workers, our guidance officers, and our guidance counselors. And also, too, we are looking closely at those students who would need aids in the classroom to ensure that there's equity.
Right. Now, another quick question. In terms of the disparity in performance between the denominational schools and the government schools, so to speak, one of the issues might be that of culture in terms of the learning environment and the culture itself, which for some reason or the other is not being properly addressed. While you may look at teachers and teaching outcomes and these type of things, but the actual culture within the school environment, has any studies or research been done or are being done to try to have some, to rope into those schools some of the success areas from the denominational schools in terms of culture?
Yes, we always have research ongoing, but if you had listened to me earlier in Parliament, I spoke about the leadership crisis. There, out of the 125 schools, there are over 90 vacancies at the secondary level and over 250 vacancies at the primary school level out of the 444 schools. One of the things we've been working closely with the Teaching Service Commission to ensure that we are filling those vacancies. And at the Ministry of Education, we have the ongoing training of administrators, both in management and in terms of leadership. Because in order to change culture, you need to have the right set of leadership skills. And so it's because of those vacancies have been neglected for so long that we have arrived at this point in terms of the leadership crisis in our schools. So we are working quickly. And up to yesterday, our discussions with the chairman of the Teaching Service Commission to ensure that we move as quickly as possible. And that's one of the most significant approaches we are taking in giving the schools the opportunity to have appointed principals and senior teachers and deans and heads of departments and vice principals so they could provide the proper leadership in the schools.
Yeah. To Minister Smith, in terms of the Interministerial Committee to deal with cybersecurity and AI, I would imagine you are the chairman of that committee, or is there a chairman of that Interministerial Committee?
Thank you for your question. So the committee essentially is chaired by the Ministry of Public Administration and Artificial Intelligence, and so the chairmanship and the secretariat rests in that body.
Right, sure. In terms of that particular, the work to emanate from that committee, will it in any way compromise or pry into the privacy of people in terms of their private communications and so on? These are important questions that need to be asked.
Yeah, certainly. Certainly, the purpose of the committee is for inclusion, inclusion in everything that we do. So I think the genesis of it is firstly to engage the experts, the persons that are most aware and prudent in terms of dealing with the challenges that we face. And so in so doing, we've selected a number of ministries as well as organizations that we believe harness that expertise. And at the very core and center of any policy that the government puts forward, the citizens are at the front of our thinking in terms of both the review and also the administration. So yes, data protection, data security, all items related to that sort of protection is afforded to every citizen.
What I'm trying to get at, fair enough, and that's very good response answer. But while there may be certain amount of social media monitoring and so on in terms of stuff that's in the public sphere, but in terms of private communication, people's privacy, will there be any intrusion into people's privacy by way of any policy decision that may be recommended to take by this committee?
Certainly, there's no intention by the government to to pry into the lives of any citizen, and so I think the policy is essentially geared towards protection of the citizen at every level. And it's important to note for the national public that these challenges are not identified solely in Trinidad and Tobago. These are global challenges, and as the technology continues to move and to transform, these sort of actions are necessary to protect citizens. So I think that is where the center of the conversation starts. The committee was envisioned for the purpose of protection.
Right. So in terms of the interception of communication bill and so on, that any court order to monitor private communication in terms of criminal investigation and so on, that will continue to, well, you will have to get a court order rather than, willy-nilly persons who may have access to the interception equipment can be using it for various, perhaps even nefarious means.
Well, I can't speak to that, but I would say that the various bodies that are in charge of that sort of interrogation, I'm sure they would have opinions on it, but certainly we have made an attempt to engage the FIU, as well as the TTC CERT, and as well as the cybersecurity units in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So I think that is where that information may reside.
Good evening, Vidal Bishop from Express Newspapers. Dr. Dowland, is the ministry looking at teacher performance or ineffective teaching as for the low performance of these particular schools or students?
One of the things I want to say, there are many factors starting from the home, starting from the environment, and so teacher performance is one of the things that we're looking at, yes, but we're looking at all of the variables that affect the performance of students, even as far as nutrition and things like that, because you know, it's really important to be data driven when you're making decisions about the career of students and how you expose them to the educational content and the process. So yes, it's one of the factors that we are looking at.
And how significant is the gap between these top performing schools and the schools that haven't performed well?
When we publish the data, you'll be able to analyze it then. All right? Thank you.
Hi, this question is for Minister Smith. Rightfully, you said that the investor scams and the AI-generated scams have been targeting public figures and ideally a lot of media colleagues also. What is your advice? I applaud the government's initiative on this interministerial steering committee, but what is your advice on how to approach tackling this problem on your own? Because you have to go to the TDPS cybercrime unit, you have to report it to the Ministry of Legal Affairs. You know, it's a tedious process. You have to put disclaimers on social media. So what is your advice how to tackle this problem?
Thank you for the question. It's an important question. I myself have received reports of impersonations of my own person. So I mean, certainly something that that is not selective in terms of the who and the when and the where. Even as a common citizen on the ground, persons have been impersonated. We've been victims of many of these things. So I think in general, best practice, global best practice is, if you're utilizing a social media channel or you're part of a body, just ensure that the things that you subscribe to, ensure what the policies are as it relates to the tool that you're using. I think that's very important. And at the end of the day, you do have a choice as well, whether or not you engage with these channels. So that's also something to take into consideration. We do live in a digital society, so it's almost inescapable. There are bodies, as you've rightly cited, that deal with these things. In terms of how quickly they can be resolved, I think that is an ongoing challenge faced by every individual. And so we don't have necessarily an answer to the timeline for resolution of those things, but certainly I think it is in the remit of the government to create committees like this to protect citizens as best we can. So for now, I would say be prudent in the way you approach your digital identification. Be circumspect in the way you share information online on your mobile devices. I think that is the first challenge that we must all come to terms with. Secondly, it's really a situation of self-education as well. Yes, the government has a mandate to provide and amplify information to the public to make sure that they protect themselves. But we also have a personal responsibility on our own to make sure that we engage in activity that is, cannot be used against us. And I think in due time, as this committee begins to meet, there will be recommendations from the committee that the government will be happy to share with the national public. And, we as citizens as well, at the end of the day. So we too will take on these recommendations. Thank you.
And Mr. Smith, do we need to change or amend the law in terms of cybercrime?
I don't want to speak just yet on the legislative components. I can say, however, that the government has begun to look at a legislative agenda, and part of that legislative agenda would have elements as it relates to digital transformation, AI readiness, and all the associated bills and laws and amendments that are required will be looked at the Attorney General's level and will filter through down to the public in due course.
Minister Smith, I wanted to ask, based on what you mentioned about your own person, being broadcasted and it wasn't actually you, is there going to be any partnership with the Ministry of Education, considering students would be given access to devices, or at least they should be at some point soon?
Yes, the mere fact that my good colleague here is sitting beside me, there is a level of interaction and engagement. We've set the standard in terms of complementary activity between the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Public Admin, and Artificial Intelligence. Many of the programs that the Ministry of Education has set upon in terms of implementation involves critically an AI component. You'd have seen in terms of even the Wi-Fi and the technology that relates to the schools, there's an AI component, there's an artificial intelligence component. So we are continuously collaborating, and yes, we do see many more collaborations in the future because you can't escape education and emerging technology. And so we're going to tackle that as we progress as a government and as separate but combined ministries.
Dr. Daulath, any update on the issuance of these laptops?
I spoke to it earlier.
Okay, so before I pass over to my colleague, I wanted to respond to something you said earlier, Mr. Morris. Considering that we were invited as members of the media to a post-cabinet media conference, yet you said that cabinet is still ongoing, would it be taken into consideration that in order for us to have greater access to more ministers, to ask more questions, including the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister, that perhaps we can actually have a meeting or a briefing with the media after the cabinet meeting concludes, so that we are able to address all of the issues that are in the public space?
Thank you very much. I think one thing I must clear up there is that while the Prime Minister is not here, while the Finance Minister is not here, and while other ministers are not there, the public will be very well aware that any national issue that emerges outside of a Thursday, whether it be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, every single member of the government has been available to comment on it. I saw the Minister of Finance speaking about devaluation this week. I saw the Prime Minister speaking about the issue of Venezuela. And where I'm going with that is that when these issues arise, you doing your diligent work have reached out to these colleagues, and these members have responded to you, and that is how we've gotten those issues there. But we will take your comment into consideration, but I think it's very, very critical and important that we just put there that the meeting, this evening's media briefing, is to discuss issues that the cabinet thought relevant to present this evening, and the Prime Minister has always been accessible, and she will continue to be accessible to all of you, as well as the Minister of Finance and all members of the cabinet.
As we mentioned, the Minister of Finance, with respect to the imbroglio between the Auditor General, the previous Minister of Finance, and the Central Bank had mentioned, well, there was a check clearance system, which was a sticking point, basically, that the Auditor General had raised, and she was denied proper access to look into that system. There seem to have been some flaws in the system. Will your ministry be in a position to provide any sort of solution, to have a look at the system and see if there can be any solution to improving that particular system? Yes, to the Minister of AI and Public Administration.
I didn't realize that your question was pointed at me. My apologies. I will say that I think let's leave that for another time in terms of how it develops, and at an appropriate time, the relevant ministers will treat to that. Thank you.
Very quickly, Minister Smith, I saw your ministry put out a vacancy for an information commissioner. What that person's going to do?
Well, I believe there was a JD also attached to that job, so I think it's quite clear. The point is that we are trying to consolidate most of the efforts of the government. We're trying to consolidate in terms of creating more efficient ways in which we conduct and do business. And given the emergence of technology, etc., I think that you would see in the description of the job that it's quite a necessary engagement at this point. If we are serious about digital transformation and artificial intelligence and the progress of a digital society, these persons are a part of the human capital, and they need to be, we need to be resourced with them. And so that's the activity that the ministry is engaged in at the moment.
And you said the person has to be an attorney.
I think one of the criteria is that you must have 10 years experience as a practicing attorney. I think that was one of the items in terms of a checkbox. Yeah.
And then finally, in May, when you all came and spoke about high rentals for properties to be used by the state, we would have asked the Prime Minister about a national work from home policy, and at the time she said that's something that you all might consider. Did you consider it?
Well, I think that in particular is still under consideration and review, and at an appropriate time, I'm sure the Prime Minister will vest her views with the media and the general public.
So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate your presence here today, and we wish you a safe journey home, and thank you for joining our Cabinet Media Conference today. Thank you very much.
This is TTT. Live for local.